Alright, down here at the garden. Did some transplanting of stuff in the basement out to the garden yesterday. Still got a little bit more to do, but it's time to plant my giant corn. This is giant Incan couscous corn. I've had it soaking in water all morning here, just in preparation. I don't know if that's necessary, but figure it couldn't hurt. So, I'll show you what we got going on here. About 3 weeks ago, we got our potatoes planted. They've started coming up in these first 2 rows. And of course, last night we transplanted our zucchini out of the basement, and the squash, and our onions. Now, a lot of people think, you know, big plants are better to transplant because you get a head start. But larger plants actually get stunted when you plant them out because of the transplant shock. You're much better off planting out smaller plants. And here's a good example. Look at how good these 2 smaller plants are doing. They're not really suffering from the transplant shock like those larger plants are. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're planting your garden. Of course, squash and zucchini I could have just direct sown out here. But I figured why not get a couple weeks jump start on it. We're still going to be using the planters this year. I've got one that got damaged. When I went to move it, I poked a hole in the liner, so I'm just taking the soil out of it and topping up the others. And we actually have a volunteer potato plant here from last year that just came up in this planter. And a squirrel apparently planted me a pecan tree. So I'm going to have to get that out of there, and I may plant that up in the woods somewhere. But this giant corn I'm planting is going to get about 18 foot tall. But there isn't a lot of information about how to plant it. I've seen similar varieties of corn, and I've gotten sort of the instructions of how to plant it, at least in its native location. I'm going to put these plants about 2 foot apart on the rows, and my row spacing is just about 5 foot. I think it should have been narrow at 4 foot. But I'm going to plant these last 5 rows here in that giant corn. I'm just growing it for fun. Like I said, I'm going to try and make some of the original recipe corn nuts out of it. Now when I plant this corn, I'm basically just going to level off the spot. I'm going to dig out a hole about 6 inches deep. I'm going to put in a little bit of nitrogen fertilizer, cover that up, put in the seed at about 2.5 inches, and then cover that up and water it in. That's sort of the way I plant my normal corn, although not that deep. But from what I've read about these giant varieties of corn, is that they need to be planted a little bit deeper, and they're much faster growing. From my understanding, in their native environment, they don't actually grow giant. They do have giant ears, but the plants themselves don't have that giantism. They're native to a much more mild climate that doesn't have the wind we have here. So the wind may be a problem. the rest of these planted. I'll do another update on this as soon as they get sprouted.